Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be joining us, and welcome to this session. This is one of many in the TPR series, coming towards the end of this series actually, and this one that we're focusing specifically, as the title suggests, on incident management systems, but specifically in the context of tiered preparedness and response. I'm joined here today by my colleague, Dave Rouse. So between us, we'll be presenting the session. I'll start by briefly introducing myself to those that I don't know on the call. So I'm the Response and Technical Manager based here in Southampton in the UK. I've been with Oil Spill Response now for about 20 years. And I'm fortunate enough to help or co-author the Tiered Preparedness and Response Good Practice Guide. And I've also been involved recently in some of the evolutions of the IMS Good Practice Handbook as well. So hopefully we're going to inject some of that as we move through the slides over the next 20 minutes or so. And this is what we're going to use today. It's about 20 minutes, going to be quite punchy. We're going to cover some high-level concepts, which I'll talk to in a second. But I'll just pass to Dave and I'll give you a brief overview of what we're going to cover.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Rouse, as you can see on the screen. I am OSRL's Crisis and Incident Management Lead, and I've spent nearly 20 years helping governments and organisations prepare and respond to incidents of various types, typically oil spills more latterly, but lots of experience around lots of different incident types. So as Paul said, today we're going to cover incident management systems in the tiered preparedness and response context. I think let's get on with it.
Thank you, Dave. So yes, in typical format, just going to quickly go through what we're going to cover today. So I think it's probably we're going to start giving you a little bit of context of what TPR is. I'm hoping that most of you on the call will understand what the strange diagram is in the corner. There's a little hint to what we're going to talk about first and foremost. I'm going to cover that briefly. Then we're going to go into IMS, and we're going to look at IMS not as a training course. This isn't an IMS or ICS 300 course. We assume a certain level of knowledge on here, but please ask questions if you do have them as we go through. But we're going to frame IMS as a structure, but also as a skill set and a mindset, and that kind of holy trilogy, if you like, of the three elements that really make an effective and efficient incident management structure or system. As we walk through as well, we're going to sort of dust in a little bit of the post-COVID thinking and how the IMS or thinking around IMS has evolved over recent years. COVID had an accelerative kind of impact on incident management, and specifically around the sort of virtual and hybrid side of things as well. So that's what we're going to cover. I'm going to move swiftly on to tiered preparedness and response itself. So this wheel, the capability wheel as it's affectionately been termed, was originally set out as a visualization tool really to try and exemplify the toolkit. We've got, in an oil spill response world, we've got a lot of different tools that we could deploy depending on the scenario we face. I'm not going to go around the 15 different tools there, but each one is divided into whether it's a tier 1, i.e. available locally, tier 2 in the green segments around the outside, whether it's available in that country or regionally. And then in the outskirts there, we've got the sort of pale blue colour, which talks about the tier 3 or internationally available capabilities. In the middle, which is often overlooked, and it's not divided into the three sort of subsections of tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3 on the screen, but IMS is the tool essentially that pulls together all those different capabilities and allows you to unlock the potential or latent kind of effectiveness that you can achieve for all those different tools or techniques that surround it. You could say that IMS is also tiered because as we know, you could have local support for an incident management structure, regional or international as well. But what we want to really remind you about is the capabilities that surround it all, and including IMS itself, are dependent about people, trained expertise, dedicated equipment, and that kind of flexible area of other support. So in terms of capability, IMS is somewhat different, and we've taken a different view on how to frame the capability of incident management systems itself. So I'll pass over to Dave as he talks about the OSRL view on how we frame that.
Thank you, Paul. And I think one of the things to take away there is that IMS, incident management systems, unlock the potential of all of those other capabilities. So you can see on the screen three ways that we break down an incident management system. It's another capability. It's a capability in its own right. And these are the components: structure, skill set, and mindset. All of these need to be present, and all of them need to work in harmony in order to have an effective incident management system, and more importantly, an effective response. So we're going to break those down and get into some detail about what we mean by each, starting now with structure.
So yeah, thanks, Dave. And I guess certainly when I think about IMS or ICS, I first and foremost think about structure. We think about the forms, we think about the resources, we think about the software, the roles and responsibility, the role cards, the incident management handbooks, the tangible things that are quite easy to sort of exemplify in terms of an incident management system. But yeah, the structure itself encompasses all those different elements. So we're just going to walk through a few slides which talks to structure, because there are lots of different flavors here. You might be experiencing one type of incident management structure. It might be ICS that you're trained in, but as you see on the screen, there are lots of different variants on IMS, and that's what the Good Practice Guide, which is centered in the middle there, the IPCA Good Practice Guide on Incident Management Systems. That was brought together to try and exemplify and illustrate all the commonalities, if you like, the things that work really well. You see on the screen there the various international, I guess, modifications or adaptations of ICS or IMS. But there are common themes that run through those systems. I'm going to quickly pull out some of these. I'm not going to go through all of this. We're going to share the slides, so please, you can use these as a reference aid. But there are certain things that sort of jump out and I just wanted to touch upon. First and foremost, I guess, is the command structure. An incident management system is just about understanding what's happening and knowing what you're doing about it. And as Dave said, unlocking the potential of those capabilities, first and foremost, so we can effect an effective and efficient response. Lots of different approaches to the command structure, from a single command, unified command, to a coordinated command. And wherever you're operating in the world will depend on what that type of structure that you use. Another feature is the kind of almost infinite scalability of this structure, if you like, going from sort of an individual person who runs through some of the frameworks of an IMS, right through to what we've seen in 2010 in Macondo, where we had 47,000 people as part of that overall capability piece there. So infinitely scalable. One of the things that allows it to be scalable is another feature of the incident management system is that manageable span of control. On the slide there, it says around 3 to 7. It's not prescriptive exactly, but that's the sweet spot between 3 to 7 people. More than that, we tend to break out and create other structures, if you like, or extra lines of reports. There's one I just skirted over there is about the incident action plan. That's a critical piece, and that talks to the operational period of either a verbal or often a written sort of commitment to what you're going to achieve in that next operational period. The other one I missed there, a very key and very important one, is being objectives driven, so that all those resources, everyone's effort is pointed towards the same direction. I'm going to skirt through some of these here. I'm going to sort of settle on the last piece under sort of managing an incident using ICS, specifically around the planning cycle. As I said, this isn't an ICS or IMS 300 course or a specific training, but for those of you on the call, you will recognise the planning P. And one of the evolutions that we've seen in developing the new incident management good practice guide is this evolution towards allowing us to think systematically outside of that typical operational period. And as we know, that operational period is typically set during the incident. Let's say it's a 24-hour operational period. We're recognizing that putting a structure in place to allow a structured approach to that forward planning piece allows us to be more tailored and targeted in our actions to prevent the worst case scenario from emerging. So what it does, and what we're hoping to see in the new good practice guide when it's released, is a treatment on this forward planning framework, essentially, which is a modification of a technique that we've seen deployed really quite effectively on crisis management. Crisis management is very much about understanding how to offset or prevent the worst case scenario from materializing. But what this does in the good practice guide we're going to see is a stepwise process which allows us to review the objectives and key facts to make sure that we've got the key facts that are going to drive our decision-making process, and then allow that brainstorming process to kick in to understand those potential issues that could materialize that prevent us from achieving those objectives. What then that allows us to do is apply a very sort of arbitrary or basic risk-based assessment to prioritize those issues. And then you can create mitigation actions that feed into the incident action plan to get you ahead of the incident. It's very much a process to get out of the downing in and looking at that sort of transactionary 24-hour cycle into eyes to the horizon and prevent those issues from worsening. So hopefully we'll see that appear as the good practice guide is released. I'm going to pass next to Dave, who's going to talk about the second part of the trilogy, which is skill set. Dave.
Thanks, Paul. And I think the forward planning cycle is probably amongst the one or two most important updates in the new good practice guide, that appreciation of how to anticipate the longer range issues. So we've covered off structure. Structure is clearly very important, but the reason it is there is to support and underpin people, which are the most critical piece. And we look at people through two dimensions, the first of which is skill set, and the second is mindset, which we'll talk about in a minute. We define skill set here as who's on the team, what can they do? And we're talking about competencies, the competencies required to manage the incident or crisis or emergency. Within the team, we need certain technical skill sets and expertise. So that could be in legal or finance or IT or science or planning or operations or logistics. But we then also will need incident-specific expertise. In an oil spill, you're looking for environmental and oil spill response. We might be looking for PR or reputation management. In a different kind of incident, you might require security or cybersecurity, domain expertise. So that's one way of looking at skill set. The other way of looking at skill set are the behavioural competencies that are needed, such as leadership, being able to formulate and execute a strategy, to innovate, to influence, to communicate, adapt to change, teamwork, and communicate with clarity and be able to portray that to the various stakeholders. So two ways that we would look at skill set. And as we go on to the next slide, just there, just a graphic that shows some of the blend and the mix of skills that are needed in order to be effective. So we'll move on again to different operating models. This is something else that's coming out in the new good practice guide. And by different operating models, we're talking about virtual or physical or hybrid response. So I think what the pandemic showed us is that the old thinking that incident management can only be done face-to-face no longer applies. And yes, there will be some cases where it is desirable, but what we have learned through the pandemic is how to operate effectively when either fully virtual or in a virtual hybrid setting. So we now have much more confidence in those options and the latest thinking around them about how to make them work. And I think even though the restrictions imposed by the pandemic are now largely gone, the benefits of being able to run in a virtual or a hybrid incident management team are clearly there to stay. So when used appropriately in the correct circumstances, it can enable that initial response to get going far more quickly, and it can help access a much broader range of expertise and put that available to the incident management team or crisis management team so that they can make better decisions, which is especially useful when that expertise might only be needed for certain time periods. So this is under the skill set category. You might say, well, this feels like structure. We think it's under skill set because this is about the access to that expertise, but it demands and depends on other skills. So as we all experienced during the pandemic, working through a screen requires a different approach and a different application to ensure, different application of things like leadership and making sure the communication is effective, that it's received, that the informal and formal communication lines, which are a characteristic of IMS, can happen. And those skills that we learned, we need to apply in a response situation with the addition of the pressure created by needing to make decisions rapidly with incomplete and questionable, sometimes, information. So I would offer that having structure and skill set are both clearly critical, but in themselves are not enough. And that there's the mindset ingredient, the second way that we look at people, which makes the difference between an average and a high-performing response team. So what do I mean by mindset? It's talking about how individuals and how the team perceive and tackle challenging situations. And the key thing to take away from this is that mindset is a skill. So we're talking about how people and organisations make sense of and approach the challenge of a crisis, which is what we think governs their performance. At a team level, this is the collective mindset, the chemistry of the team, the different types of personalities that need to be able to work together and avoid closed-minded thinking to be able to really debate and discuss issues at pace. And at an individual level, it's the ability to understand the world, what's happening, and make sense of it in a way that you can act with composure and perform appropriately under pressure. And there will be some of you, I think, would say, well, some people are naturally very gifted at that, and that's a natural thing that comes to people. What we've learned, and we've learned this from science, from the military, from sports science, from the blue light services, is that this is also a skill, and like any skill, it can be taught. It can be practiced, it can be honed, and it can be perfected. So just to show you, we've developed and curated a toolbox that we provide to people who work in incident and crisis management teams based around a very simple model of red to blue heads, which is the one on the left. And this is all about where you place your attention will help govern performance. And I won't try and get into any detail there. But please get in touch if you'd like to know more. And this is really interesting, really exciting. We're finding the most progressive organisations now are switching on to the importance of teaching mindset and resilience to their crisis teams. So lots of really interesting stuff happening in this space. On the right-hand side of the screen, one of the ways is a picture showing the heart rate variability monitor, which we used during our training as a way of showing how the stress reaction, the physiological stress reaction, can be affected by using these simple tools that we provide. We can get people back to clarity and thinking clearly under pressure. And just on the next slide, a couple of grabs from some training that we did recently. The first person here is the stressed out incident commander. They were wearing the heart rate monitor through the training. And you can see by the red bars being very high, very, very stressed individual all the way through the simulation that we were putting them under. And a spike in the heart rate, which is the black line, at the point where they were told that they needed to make a call to headquarters to update them. So this was an individual, before we'd given them any of the tools to affect this, just to create some baseline data. This is the sort of information that makes it very personal and helps people really connect to it and why it's important. And then on the next slide, we've got a very, very calm, composed, super experienced incident commander that already would have had some of the inherent natural ability and some tools in their toolkit to manage and maintain stress. So the same type of incident, two very different stress reactions from two different people shown by the data. But what this enabled us to do was have really quality conversations and curate further the help and support we could give. So I've kind of dived into how does OSRL work with organisations and teach this, and we're still continuing to develop that. And I think that probably wraps up mindset in the time that we have. I'm quite conscious of the time, and we could talk about this for a while, but Paul, I'll give it back to you to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Yeah, as I said, that was a whistle-stop tour, and hopefully giving you a different lens to look at IMS. And as mentioned at the start, the structure is what comes to mind when you think of IMS. You think of ICS, the forms, the software, etc., etc. And certainly our member companies and those which are on the call today, we know that that's something that you manage very carefully. As are the skill sets, and obviously part of TPR and sort of the general preparedness piece is making sure that we are trained and competent in the roles that we do. I feel like the real growth area to really unlock the potential of those structure and skill set to make them as effective as possible is that area of mindset. Dave's shown some really interesting sort of snippets of what we've done already with certain of our members, and it is quite breathtaking how this isn't something that's just innate. You're not just born with it. It is a skill that can be learned, and there are tools and techniques that you can calm yourself and achieve almost that flow state, if you like, throughout. So I believe that mindset piece is a real growth, that human area, if you like, of an effective and efficient oil spill response or incident response itself. So yeah, that's something we just given you enough of a flavour here. We're coming up on time now, but so that was our take, if you like, on an incident management system as part of the TPR approach. We know we could only cover a certain amount in 20 minutes, so we've just up on the screen now with some extra further reading. We should be very soon in terms of IPCA's publishing of the new good practice guidance, the updated version, which we kind of whet your appetite on. There are lots of other changes in there, so it should be a really exciting read and bringing that thinking up to date. That's the link there. We'll share this afterwards. You can actually go and download the current good practice guide, but watch that space for the new guidance. And also, unashamedly, we're pointing you towards some of the OSRL resources, the incident management handbook itself, which is that sort of more transactional kind of approach to running an incident. But then the crisis management handbook as well takes it a little bit further, takes some of the concepts that we've touched here upon the sort of the trilogy of skill set, mindset, structure, in a crisis management kind of framework, but they are infinitely transferable to an incident management piece as well. So please feel free to go online, download that. But equally, if you have any questions, please reach out to Dave, myself, or anyone else in Oil Spill Response. We'll be happy to answer any questions offline. But equally, we've got, I think, 7 minutes on our time contract, so we're happy to take any questions now. I'll ask Christina if we've got any questions that are coming through.
I have now allowed mics, so people can ask questions if you'd like to. We don't have any questions at this point.
Go ahead, Mark.
Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Just a quick one. Dave, you were talking there about the new operating sort of models which have come through, obviously, during COVID and the pandemic, and the world obviously has changed now, and we've moved more to this hybrid working as well as the virtual as part of some of the emergency response I was involved with during COVID. We had a lot of silver and tactical coordinating group meetings which were done virtually. Has yourself and the team found any particular areas of drawback when virtual meetings, particularly in emergency and crisis response? A couple of things that we found is that when those ground rules, the fundamentals weren't set well by the chair and the facilitator, those meetings did detract from some of the quality of some of the input. We found that where cameras amazingly were not used by some of the participants, there was less involvement, particularly with the category 2 responders who didn't have a major part to play. And also we found some of those opportunities where someone in a team would perhaps speak where there was space. In a virtual environment, they didn't take that opportunity. Have yourself and the team found that in those virtual environments that there was any loss of quality in terms of participation?
Thank you, Mark. And I was going to invite you to answer your own question, but you did provide some starters and echo everything that you've seen. I think we saw the evolution over the course of the certainly initial stages of the pandemic as people got to grips with how to do it. Fatigue management, certainly as the pandemic went on, became a particularly important issue to manage. The long time stuck at a screen, very difficult to step away because you don't know what you're going to miss. Those kind of effects. So yes, there were some drawbacks, and I think collectively, and there's more information in the Good Practice Guide and some of our other documentation as well about how to do it well. But certainly, I think it came down to the well-being aspect, fatigue management, rather than necessarily the quality of the decisions made. And I think, in fact, that was one area that we feared might be compromised. And when we talk about the importance of managing things face to face where you can, because you can have the full conversations. When we started off going online and working with our members on this, the fear was we're going to lose quality, we're going to make less good decisions. And that was probably the area that we didn't see so much impact. Paul, I don't know if you would add to that.
Yeah, I'm going to probably echo some of the things that Mark, you already pointed out there. So on the slide earlier, we talked about meeting etiquette, and it's really important to set that etiquette and make sure everyone is aware of that. So simple things like earlier on, you put the hand up, that virtual hand is such a powerful tool to allow people to interject at the right time. We also found that in certainly some of those very large meetings or lots of breakout meetings, if you like, the use of process facilitators really helps as well. So, and that's something that maps again from the crisis management piece as well. Someone who understands the process and can help hold people's hand through it. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things, but yeah, I'll go back to the fatigue management, because there is a tendency, if you're sat at home and you're on your laptop, then there is this distraction, this draw towards the day job as well. So on the slide earlier on, we said about making sure that you do create a division between the two, delegate down and get your line managers to support to allow you to focus on the incident, because it will suck time out of your day. And it's so tempting just to click across to another meeting, because you can, which is one of those things you can't do if you're in a physical incident command center, if you like. Yeah. So yeah, lots of findings, probably a few others there, but yeah, I think those are the big ones.
It'll be good to compare notes further, Mark.
Yeah, definitely. Nice one. Thanks for that.
Questions? Thanks, Master. Do you have any others?
We do not at this stage.
Okay, I don't see any more hands up, but as I said, if there are other questions that you want to ask but want to take offline, then please reach out to us. Christina, I think in terms of admin, that they'll have access to this recording as well on the slides.
Yes, so the recording will go on the website later this week, and we'll also email out to let everybody know that that's been done, and the slides will be available, as Paul said. So yeah, we'll let you know.
Thanks, Christina. And finally, just to say thank you for joining. It was a whistle-stop tour. Hopefully we've whet your appetite and given you a different lens to look at incident management systems in a TPR and skill set structure mindset approach. But thanks for your attention, and yeah, see you soon.